Hey guys, and welcome back to Tennis 360, the podcast where we talk about all things tennis. My name's Anthony Hirsch.
I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
Welcome back to the podcast. So today we're going to preview the semifinals of Roland Garros. We will be talking about the semifinals on the ATP side and the WTA side, going through all four semifinals. And I will start with the Sinner Alcaraz semifinal on the men's side. It is 4-4 in the head-to-head. And they're playing up at tied up at 4-piece. Should be interesting. Sinner just got Alcaraz just got the best of Sinner at Indian Wells. It's going to be interesting to see how Sinner replies now to that. It is on probably what most people would say Sinner's worst surface, but it'll be interesting to see how he responds. He is now crowned the new world number one after Djokovic pulled out of the tournament. They both have won in straight sets. Together, they've only lost one set, Alcaraz versus De Jong. And I think it will be interesting. I personally backed Alcaraz to be the champion of the tournament. He is still the person I'm backing in this match. I think he has the prowess and confidence on clay courts, but I'm interested to see what you think as well, Eliza.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this match. It's a shame we're not getting this one in the finals, but of course, with Djokovic's withdrawal, Sinner will take over the number one seed, and hopefully this might mean that we could get a Sinner Alcaraz final at Wimbledon. But that's hearsay. We'll focus on the semifinal at the French. At a high level, I would tend to kind of agree with you. I would, my first assumption is that Alcaraz is slightly stronger on, slower surfaces than Sinner in that head-to-head. The matches between them, though, generally have been so tight and always mega entertaining. And I think that, the Indian Wells match is probably a little bit more indicative of the clay court surface, but I wasn't sure of Sinner's level that tournament. If he hurt himself a little bit in the second set when he fell, the level seemed to drop off a little bit. But in general, the matches that we've seen between them have always been highly entertaining and very close. And I think that, the last time we saw them play on clay is probably, not at the level that Sinner is playing now. So it's very interesting to kind of try to pick apart what might be the difference makers between the two and, what tactically we should be looking out for.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about it is that the unexpected thing is that Sinner beat them in their one clay meeting before in Umag in the final there, 6-7, 6-1, 6-1. So that was unexpected. I think Alcaraz will be very much hoping for a revenge victory tomorrow. I would be surprised if that's not one of the main things that that might be a motivating factor tomorrow for Alcaraz. Is like, hey, I want to prove myself in this rivalry that I'm the guy who should be winning the matches when we get onto a clay court. That's what I'm kind of expecting. And in terms of kind of strategy, it's kind of hard to say. I think Alcaraz will want to really make it so that the variety that they're both implementing is some of the biggest factors in the match, because Alcaraz, I still think, has the leg up when it comes to drop shotting and when it comes to net play and all of that kind of stuff and working the court in ways that might be difficult. So still a little bit more difficult for Jannik, although I know he's improved a lot in those ways. I think those are some of the things that Alcaraz might need to work on. I think that those are some of the things that Alcaraz needs to focus on when we get to the match tomorrow. And I think that those would be some of the biggest factors, but I agree that their matches are always just so dynamic. I think they push the best out of each other in terms of their play. I really think that it doesn't get much better in terms of a rivalry, making them have to play their best. Sinner is just forced to bring out all of his variety when he plays Alcaraz, and Alcaraz is just has to stay, make sure he's still on the baseline and kind of playing super improvisational and super on it, hitting quick shots, making sure that he's trying to be the one dictating, and it creates some fun matches. And the last time they played was that US Open epic. Last time they played at a Grand Slam, so I'm definitely excited for it.
Yeah, I think we, reliably know this now from Alcaraz, that he's going to use the drop shot to his advantage, and surely Sinner knows that as well. So he is going to be looking for that. I do think the Sinner serve maybe is his slight advantage or edge over Alcaraz in terms of the variety that he can use on the serve to help set him up on his service games, to have slightly easier holds. I think Sinner will need to be even more aggressive, look to be even more aggressive from the baseline than perhaps he has against other opponents. I think when he played against Dimitrov, what he did so well, exploiting, of course, a one-handed backhand versus a two, but he ran around that backhand and fired forehands cross court, daring Dimitrov to hit it down the line. And he did so with really strong execution. In this case, I think he actually might look for the down the line shots a little bit more, look to really open up the court and prevent Alcaraz from being able to hit him with a drop shot from kind of unfavorable positions. Sinner will need to be pretty kind of strict with himself about staying up on the baseline, trying to take balls early and push Alcaraz back, again, putting him in an unfavorable position to hit a drop shot from. He'll be looking to really kind of keep the balls deep and use the width of the court in this match to kind of get an advantage. What Alcaraz offers, not just from the variety, but his court coverage is also absurd. And so on the clay, I think, Sinner will kind of look for the down the line and then look for a short angle and kind of try to exploit Alcaraz from that perspective. But I mean, both of them have such dangerous weapons from the baseline in general. I would say maybe Alcaraz is the slightly more confident net player. Perhaps in this case, he might look to come to net a little bit more than Sinner would and try to finish the points and get Sinner in a little bit of kind of no man's land. But again, I mean, this is a head-to-head that we've seen where that they both have such strong weapons and kind of quite few weaknesses. It's just a matter of who's able to really kind of execute in these finest of margins. And that's why we're also entertained by this match. That from a strategic perspective, I think it's hard as an outsider to know really the ins and outs of what they might be looking to do, especially, given that you never know what the other player is feeling on the day and what might be working for them and what might not be, and do they need to go to a plan B, etc. I definitely don't think this is going to be a straight sets match either way. My hope is that we get a 5-setter. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of tie breaks, but I'm kind of aligned with you. I'm leaning towards Alcaraz, but I did do a poll on this on my Instagram, and Sinner was the strong favorite amongst my followers. So it seems to be a mixed bag. I'm not sure which way to lean. I kind of want Sinner to win, but I'm going to pick Alcaraz and hope that I'm happy both ways.
Yeah. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense because Sinner has been the best player so far this year. But in terms of their strategy, I agree. It's kind of an ever-changing chess match. They even speak about the fact that they're implementing new things into their game every time when they when they play each other. And I think that's only good. That's only good in terms of their rivalry. And I mean, in terms of what Jannik, I think, in terms of Jannik's kind of game, I think, the pushing Alcaraz behind the baseline and keeping him back behind the baseline is going to be absolutely crucial. It's going to be tougher on this court. Absolutely. But I think that if he can manage to do that, it's also, I think, the fact that at times I think Alcaraz can be a little bit less solid than Sinner, a little bit lower, kind of a little bit more up and down, let's say. So I think Sinner can use that to his advantage and kind of be smarter building out the points. I think that just kind of little things like that might help him in the grand scheme of things and kind of his consistency. And I think that could be a big thing for Jannik. But it's going to be very exciting. And I think maybe Jannik beating Alcaraz would be quite good for the rivalry. But you could also make the case for Alcaraz in terms of, people have said that Sinner, a lot of people are arguing that Sinner is going to lead the rivalry by a lot and that he's a problem for Alcaraz. So if Alcaraz now goes at 5-4, suddenly the conversation becomes very different. Alcaraz reaches his, what would it be? I think his third Grand Slam final. He's won his first two on 3 different surfaces. So it would be very exciting. And I think that would change the conversation. So either way, you can make a case for it being good. And if Sinner wins, he won the Australian Open. The calendar slam is somewhere in the conversation.
Wow.
But it's still a bit early. But I go with Alcaraz in 4 sets because I just feel like he's a little bit more confident on the clay. I think his serve isn't that hurt by the clay. I've really liked what I've seen in this event so far, and I think he'll be he's just moving so freely and he's so quick, and on a clay court he has so much time to run down the center balls, and that was working well at Indian Wells as well, where the conditions are very slow. Yeah. So I got Alcaraz in four sets at the end of the day. I also don't think it'll be straight sets. I really hope that we don't get a straight sets match. I hope that it is 5 sets.
Yeah, look, I mean, I do think this is probably, one of the rivalries of the future. I don't think that the winner of this match is really going to determine long-term kind of who comes out on top at the end of their careers. It's just far too early to make predictions about, who's going to be the better, more successful player of the two over the course of their careers. Picking up on kind of one of your earlier points there, I think where some of those biggest improvements from Sinner has been going from 13th seed this time last year at Roland Garros to now being ranked number 1 at the end of the tournament has really been a lot around his kind of decision making and his ability to kind of strategically execute on points. And his shot selection has been really smart. And I think, over the course of this calendar year for Alcaraz since winning Wimbledon, I think there were more question marks around kind of his maturity level in terms of the shot selection, and that being an area that can sometimes let him down, getting overexcited, and being the entertainer that he is, kind of going for too much. So I think, we talked about kind of a tactics thing from Sinner's perspective. I think what'll be key here from Alcaraz is the patience in building the points, being smart with the shot selection, not kind of trying to over muscle or, go for the drop shot too early in a rally, and really kind of waiting for the door to open and looking for those opportunities. And then, of course, I think he totally proved us, wrong last year in terms of his ability to overcome the nerve management issues that he showed in last year's semi versus Djokovic, where he just totally got overwhelmed by winning Wimbledon just a couple of weeks later. But one always, wonders, sometimes these aren't linear progressions in terms of how players, deal with the specific challenges. We've seen from Sinner 2 steps forward, 1 step back in certain areas when it comes to his fitness and also his nerve management. So I think it could be a little bit of a kind of interesting factor. Again, the last time they faced each other in a Grand Slam semi was at the US Open, and it was such a high level. I think this time around they're playing maybe with more expectation, that they're the top seeds left, and they're kind of the beacon or flag bearers of the future of tennis. So one never knows how that might weigh on one or the other. But it could be a factor here where we could see a couple of games that are wayward here and there, depending on the pressure situation. But from Alcaraz's perspective, I think he's going to have to play a really well-balanced, really mentally strong match to overcome Jannik.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point, because it does come at a crucial moment where the rivalry could go either way and flip, and the momentum is really on a balance for both players. I mean, Sinner is currently running with it, but if Alcaraz wins it, then he could get it as well. So do you have a prediction for this one ultimately? What player and how many sets?
I'm going to go with Alcaraz in 5.
Alcaraz in 5. Okay. So we're both going Alcaraz for 4 sets and 5 sets. We'll see.
I kind of hope I'm wrong, but I don't know. A slam on the table would just make the conversation crazy. So I'd be up for that too, to be honest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then the other semifinal is Alexander Zverev taking on Casper Ruud. Zverev took out Demonor in the quarterfinals. And Ruud got the walkover from Novak Djokovic. So Ruud is through. And I don't know if that's good or bad for Casper, because he it's lacking match play, but also it's good that he didn't have to play Novak, probably because Novak is Novak. But I kind of at the end of the day think that maybe lacking match play is not good against Zverev, who I don't know. I just think that getting those confidence from the 2-5 setters, maybe picking up steam now in the semifinals. So I just don't know. I think that Zverev is going to be motivated for revenge from last year, and I think that We'll see. I do like Casper a lot at Roland Garros, and I think that he's absolutely one of the contenders here, though. And I think it should be super interesting. I think backhand to backhand, Zverev should be feeling rather good against Casper. I feel like Casper throughout this event hasn't really brought his absolute top level anyway, but he is through. I am high on Casper, and I'm kind of hoping that Casper proves me wrong, to be honest. But I kind of back Zverev a little bit in this matchup at this point. I feel like maybe he's playing the better tennis at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, Casper's played the most matches on tour this season, so it's like he's not lacking match play, but within a tournament itself, one can argue that when you get a walkover at quarters, going into a semi, you get a little bit of kind of like too much time to think about it, too much, rest time. And we know that Ruud is somebody who just likes to play a lot of matches and kind of stay busy. So I'm curious, like, what his preparation kind of has looked like, knowing that he isn't playing this quarterfinal against Djokovic, and he's kind of able to sit and prepare. He has won the last two matches that he's played against Zverev. One here, as you mentioned, last year in the semifinal, where he really cleaned up Zverev, winning that third set to love. The previous time that they played was in 2022 in Miami. So they haven't played since this time last year. And so I do think Zverev is in quite a different position, fitness-wise, tennis-wise, than he was last year. Obviously, last year coming back from the prior year where he went off of court in a wheelchair. So I think he was just happy to even make it to the semifinal last year, perhaps exceeded his own expectations in that way and kind of fell short of the mark there. But, Zverev has some fantastic weapons in this matchup. I think the serve is going to need to be reliable. I think Ruud will be kind of quite quietly confident in this situation. He's been in the last two Roland Garros semifinals. He feels very strong on the clay. Both won titles, 500 titles. Obviously, Zverev got a Masters title this clay court season. I think both of them are probably feeling quite confident about the level of their tennis at the moment. And in a way, I'm almost giving Casper Ruud a little bit of the mental edge over Zverev, given Zverev's kind of history of his mentality around, quarters, semifinal matches where he tends to have these blips in performances, and Ruud having gotten to the final the last two times, and kind of seemingly showing a trend of improvement over the last couple of years, is like as the pressure's increasing, he's starting to do better and better, and taking things in his stride. And he'll certainly look at this tournament without Nadal and Djokovic now as his biggest opportunity to win, to solidify himself as, the best clay court player on the men's tour. And so I think the things to look for is really going to be, does Zverev have blips in the serve like he's had in a couple of these previous round matches where he's gone 5 sets and thrown in some very odd games? Both of them like to get into rallies, but I would say that Ruud's going to be the one that probably takes more initiative, looks to penetrate with the forehand, isn't going to be kind of willing to just get into these backhand to backhand cross-court rallies with Zverev. He's not going to want to get pinned back there. I think he's going to be the one that's going to look to take some more initiative, especially because Zverev just doesn't look to do that even on his own serve. He wants to get into a neutralized rally from the baseline. So I actually think, as much as I picked Zverev before this tournament to win it, I'm not seeing enough performances from him that make in this tournament itself that feel like, oh wow, this guy is really ready to clean up and totally prepared in this situation to get to a final. Something in my gut kind of tells me that it might be Casper Ruud who's kind of able to get a little bit of a mental edge and get on top of this tussle, especially given that he's won the last two against him as well.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I guess the only reason I'm kind of thinking that maybe the mental side might be a better thing for Zverev in this matchup than we've seen is because he's gotten through those 2 5-setters the way that he did in the third round, the round of 16, which I think can give a player a lot of confidence, and in that mental kind of game, and also winning Rome also I'm sure gave Zverev a lot of confidence as well. So those are just a few of the things that make me feel like Zverev might be a little bit more mentally sharp coming into this moment. But I do I do agree that in general, Casper has been better in these moments. But it is a very tough draw playing Zverev after not having a match as well in the quarters.
Yeah.
And I just feel like Zverev has been very good, although I do agree that he has had those moments absolutely where serve has not been working as well. But if I'm to make a best guess, then I would say that maybe it's Zverev's time for revenge from last year. That's just kind of where I'm feeling with seeing how well. I mean, Zverev did play a little bit subpar. There's no doubt about it when it came to his match against Greek Sport, although he found a way through. Greek Sport really should have done better to close that out. Against Ruud, I felt like he fought back well and played decently enough, although he did have a few of those moments as well. So I don't know. I could see it going either way, but my gut I think my gut kind of tells me that Zverev is going to win and kind of pick it up.
In what scoreline?
I'm gonna say Zverev in 5.
Okay, I'm going Ruud in 4.
Ruud in 4. Okay, I like it. Very different. Okay, yeah. And then going on now to the WTA. So we have another Coco versus Iga matchup.
Yeah.
And Iga's dominated this head-to-head. Coco won last year in Cincinnati. But Iga has completely dominated the head-to-head, and the head-to-head is something like, I think it's like 9-1 or something like that. 9-1
sounds about right. Yeah.
And so Swiatek has really just a lot of things that Coco can do. Swiatek can do better. Swiatek is just so good at returning the Coco serve as well, even when it's very strong. And I mean, it just feels like Iga has that matchup better in her favor. That being said, I mean, Iga's been tested in this tournament. She's been tested by Osaka. Gauff will also be looking for a revenge match, kind of from 2 years ago, where she lost that one 2 years ago. It will be interesting. I think Coco's playing quite well. I think her strengths that she improved upon the North American hardcourt swing have really helped her on clay as well. And kind of hitting through her shots has actually helped her a lot on clay as well to be a more effective player on the clay, especially from defense to offense on clay. And she's been looking quite good. But Iga, since that Osaka match, has looked completely terrifying. No player wants to play her really. So I think that Iga for me is the favorite at Roland Garros, again, to get it done over Coco. I hope Coco makes it at least somewhat close though, and makes it some close sets. It hasn't been close sets with Swiatek though recently.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, flowers to Coco for now reaching her third semifinal or better in a row in the Grand Slams. I think she came off of the French Open or Wimbledon last year, not feeling so good about her tennis. And I mean, what a turnaround it has been from her. And you just continue to see her progress and have such a good attitude. I mean, we have this big three conversation where Coco Gauff often gets left out of the conversation because Rybakina, got there first with the Wimbledon title a couple of years ago. So, I think she's done such a great job of being consistent now in the slams and, getting herself to a semifinal. I do think, before the tournament, majority of us did pick Swiatek to win it. Just, given the level of her tennis on the clay and the destruction that she's had against her opponents. And I think the biggest thing is the general pattern with Swiatek when losing at slams is that she loses to a big hitter or where she's challenged. And, Naomi Osaka certainly gave her quite the scare, but Osaka's game couldn't be more different from Coco Gauff's game. And so the weapons that I think Gauff would need in order to really push Swiatek on the surface, I just don't think is a part of her arsenal. So I think she might have to try some different things, and be a little bit uncomfortable on court. When you're in a head-to-head that's this lopsided, it can be nerve-wracking because you want to play your game in the way that, you usually approach your tennis, but that it's not worked for you 90% of the times prior. And so you're kind of scratching your head on what should I risk or do differently? I think Coco needs to look to be aggressive. Obviously, her movement is great, but the Swiatek aggression is so persistent and is so penetrative from such an early onset in the rallies that it can really bully you, and you get pushed around from the second ball. So I think she'll want to try to use some of her double skills, really again try to work the angles on the court, try to come into net, try to rush Swiatek a little bit, look to put Swiatek off from her usual rhythm. I wouldn't want to see Gauff get into these kind of long, extended rallies with Swiatek where she just is so good at wrestling control and then, going for a deadly winner. I think Gauff is a great server, and she'll need that serve tomorrow to be firing for her. She's going to want to try to spot serve as much as possible. Again, look for the early balls to try to execute and be aggressive herself, and try to use some variety when she can. But it's kind of a similar conversation to what we had around what does Sabalenka need to do to beat Swiatek on clay. And I don't think it's anything against Gauff or Sabalenka or anybody. I just think Swiatek has proven she's a cut above the rest on this surface. And, even Vondrousova was it's just too good. I just don't know what to do. And it has a lot of players scratching their head. And I think a lot of the commentators at this point are just kind of yeah, you might just have to hope she has a bad day or, gets nervous, which she doesn't seem to do. So I'm not sure where to point Coco Gauff in a direction that can beat Swiatek, because her game just looks so complete.
Yeah, it's very hard to coach against Iga, I think. And it just kind of goes back to what I was kind of thinking, is that Iga does quite well against players that play at least somewhat similar to her veins, kind of what you were saying. The big hitters can do the best against her. So the more that Coco can try to kind of smack forehands and kind of smack backhands on the forehand side, can be harder for her, especially playing Iga, who just has such relentless depth of shot. But I think Coco just has to kind of play fast and just run everything down. And when she can, just turn defense to offense and just start hitting absolutely huge shots. And just believe. I think she needs to believe as well. I think she believed going into the Cincinnati match. And she needs to believe from point one that somehow something crazy can happen. Sabalenka was just taken out. Maybe that can give her some hope for an upset here. Who knows? But I think if you're ready, we can move on to that Sabalenka versus Andreeva matchup as well. So cool. So Andreeva just upset Aryna Sabalenka, and she will take on Jasmine Paolini in the semifinals, who took out Rybakina. So first of all, talking about the Andreeva win over Sabalenka was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, she played really, really well. She could have served better, I think, but that's the one thing I can say. Aside from that, she was just hitting absolutely great off the backhand. She looks very complete. She's very quick. She reads the game very well, and I just feel like she has all the what's the word, kind of all the beginnings of being a very kind of a high level player who's very complete in every aspect. And I hope that we see that. I mean, she played very, very well. And Paolini, always fighting. It didn't seem like Rybakina's best day. She seemed a little bit sluggish, kind of lacking control on her shots, a lot of unforced errors from her end. And it felt like Paolini, so quick, like I said, always fighting, always just kind of locked in mentally, and so consistent from the back of the court. Great depth from her and very quick. It felt like Rybakina was hitting too many errors, maybe trying to hitting through Paolini, and it just wasn't really Rybakina's day, even though she did a good comeback, came back in the second set, and then third set kind of ran away from her. But anyway, in terms of the Paolini versus Andreeva matchup, it will be very interesting. It's a huge opportunity for a Grand Slam finalist, kind of like how we had in Australia with Zheng. And I reckon that I reckon that Andreeva, in my opinion, I could see her getting another win. Often it's hard for me to see that after such a big victory for a young player. But Andreeva beat Paolini in Madrid in straight sets. This was after she beat Vondrousova in the round before that. And I just feel like Mira maybe is a little bit different. She's so good on clay so early already. And I think she was hitting some great offensive shots in the match against Arena as well, which she needed. She had such good winners to errors ratio. I saw 41-27, and I mean that's the kind of better winners to unforced errors ratio than Rybakina had. That I think that could lead Andreeva to maybe another crazy win to get to the final. Paolini, I think, don't count out because people always count out Paolini, and she won Dubai, and now she's in the semifinals of the French. So she's top 10 in the world, and I think it'll be very interesting and another big test of Mira to see where she's at if she could get another win again. It's a big chance for her. It's also a big chance for Paolini, but I kind of reckon Mira might continue off the momentum because I was really impressed by her match against Sabalenka.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see Paolini's match versus Rybakina, but just looking at the numbers, it looks like both Rybakina and Sabalenka weren't quite, 100% healthy in these matches. And I think there's some similarity in terms of how Andreeva and Paolini approached it. They, were willing to hang in there, willing to kind of continue to push and ask the question of these big players. And both Sabalenka and Rybakina looked like they just weren't, able to hit through them. And I think that's the tricky thing on the clay when you have really good, strong, fast movers like an Andreeva or Paolini who are going to ask you to, put another ball away and another ball away. It starts to make the court smaller and smaller, and these kind of unforced errors can creep up where the top seeded player feels like they have to take the initiative to win the match. And so, yeah, you kind of create these like pressure cooker situations where, at times it then can be difficult to execute. I think that Andreeva offers a little bit more from like a weapons perspective. I would agree with you. Like that backhand down the line today looked so solid. She looks just really composed on that shot. And certainly is a dangerous weapon. But yeah, Paolini is a great fighter, great mover. She's going to retrieve a lot. She probably is just going to ask a question a lot of the time of Andreeva in this situation and kind of ask her to step up and, might be in a situation where Andreeva could get quite nervous. But, both of them first-time semifinalists, both of them would be first-time Grand Slam finalists. They're both going to be feeling the nerves equally, in my opinion. Very different stages of their career too. Paolini's 27, 28 years old, first Grand Slam semi, and she's probably thinking, how many more times am I going to get an opportunity to possibly get to a final? Whereas Andreeva's, early in her career, 17 years old, looks at this type of thing as like, I got to get there now because the youngest start winning now, and, etc. And so there's just different perspectives of that stress that can, play a role. So I wouldn't be surprised to kind of see a little bit of potentially like rocky start, a couple breaks of serves kind of at the beginning of the first set until the two of them are kind of able to settle in and really bring their level. I think this is a very interesting matchup. They've only played once before, just a couple of weeks ago. Was it in Madrid? Andreeva won that in straights. The first set went to a tiebreak, and then she cleaned up after that. I haven't, it's tough when you haven't seen a matchup enough times to kind of really be able to say like who's going to be able to execute in a strategy that might be effective. But neither of them have a big serve. They're both going to be kind of strong from the baseline and look to build points with patience. So it should be kind of a long match, my guess would be. I don't think that this will be kind of like a runaway train, but it could be a situation where one of the players is sort of backing into a win rather than able to kind of take it with initiative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, completely. And it is a fun matchup. I mean, these aren't two just, we've seen a lot of matchups recently of two kind of the biggest hitters or the biggest kind of servers. This is not going to be that. You don't want to go into this match for that. Actually, I think any of the four players left in the event, I just don't think that's what we're kind of getting, which is fine with obviously Sabalenka and Rybakina out. So that's kind of what to expect now. And I guess just going on to predictions, my prediction for the match, I would go with Mira Andreeva in 3 sets is my pick, because I ever since I saw Mira last year in Madrid, to me, she's the most kind of excited I've been about a player of her age this young. She seems very mentally level-headed, and I think that she can carry on the momentum to another win. So I'm going to go with Mira in 3 sets. What's your call for that?
Yeah, I think I'm aligned with that. I think when you're slightly younger, you maybe don't understand quite the weight of the situation that you're in when you're 28 years old and you've kind of been on the tour for 10 years already. I think you experience the pressure a little bit differently because you have the perspective of life behind you, and she doesn't have that. So I think she'll be able to manage that a little bit better. I'm guessing the crowd might go for her a little bit more as well. Be interesting to see if the crowd kind of gets involved here. My guess would be that they're just going to back the player that is losing in that set. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I think I'm aligned with you. A 3-set win for Andreeva.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of a different kind of pressure too, though. I think that both of them will be under an interesting kind of pressure. But I do agree that Mira, so young, she's just like, oh, let's just go for it. I have nothing to lose, and I think that that will help out Mira in the long term, because I think that she will be more loose, and we'll see what kind of happens, but yeah, I think that Mira can kind of keep it going. She had a great performance today. That's been the Tennis 360 podcast for this week. Please, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, all of that stuff, and we will see you at the next one.